got the old iPad with
Just make sure that the size is
that was my favourite thing.
That was your favourite. It was Winston Churchill. Why, really good thing. Are we doing Queen? Yes. Who? We're doing what? Queen Sheba. reminder. If you've not got loads of local gigs in Stony Stratford. Yeah, so, right, it's in my house. This gig is in my house. It's really lovely. Elga, okay. Yeah, sure. Just aware of Chancellor?
That's the only thing I think. We still probably make money out of that.
No, it won't be Chancellor on Matter. It's about 6 or 7 hours. It will be
The person finding the local person so they can get out of paid travel, they get paid.
For example, the gig would be at local gig. Potentially. But in theory, it's fine.
Good morning and welcome to you all. The ceremony will start in just a few minutes and the procession is on its way. Before that happens, I just have a few notices I need to read out. Can you please ensure all mobile phones are on silent or switched off? There is no personal photography permitted during the ceremony. This is due to data protection. Professional photographs are available to purchase and the event is being streamed to YouTube, which you can watch later. Professional photographs will be taken throughout the ceremony. If there is anybody who does not consent to their photo being taken today, please let the marshals know at the back of the church. In the extremely unlikely event that we need to evacuate the church in an emergency, please remain seated. The marshals will direct you out to the nearest exit points. When the ceremony is finished, the procession will leave the church and you'll be asked to stand. The procession will be followed by the graduates, then our VIPs, and then all the guests on afterwards. If children do become unsettled or disruptive during the ceremony, unfortunately, we may need to ask them to leave. Finally, to our graduates, may I be the first to congratulate you on your achievement. When your name is called, can you please step onto the stand, shake the Chancellor's hand, and to your left here, we've got some photographs. If you look to have your photograph taken, Once that's done, if you can go down the centre of the aisle there, please, and we'll direct you to another seat. Thank you very much. Please enjoy the rest of your day. Can you please stand for the procession?
Please be seated.
Good morning, everyone. On this beautiful morning, it's my pleasure as Chancellor of the University to welcome you on behalf of the University to this ceremony for the conferment of degrees. In a special year for the University, because it is the 40th anniversary of the granting of the Royal Charter to the University, which turned us from being the University College at Buckingham to being the University of Buckingham. Today is a very special occasion for you, our graduates, and for those who have taught you, many of whom are on the stage. Attaining your degree from the University of Buckingham is a real achievement and something of which you will be proud all your life. You have enjoyed the benefits of an unusually high standard of teaching from dedicated staff, and I know you will have studied hard to achieve your goals. I hope you've taken every opportunity you could to be part of our diverse and multicultural student body, which will have introduced you to people, experiences, traditions, cultures, and friends from across the world. You are the latest in a long and lengthening line of distinguished graduates, as you will be very shortly, from the University of Buckingham. As you look back on your time here and remember the support and encouragement you received, we hope you will act as ambassadors for your university and continue to burnish our outstanding reputation. I congratulate each and every one of you and wish you every success in your future careers. Thank you.
Dame Mary, Chancellor, distinguished honorary graduate, and the Reverend Will Pearson Gee, distinguished guests, members of faculty, Dean of Education, graduands, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be here with you this morning. May I first, though, thank Dame Mary Archer, give her my heartfelt thanks. She's, of course, the distinguished chair of the Science Museum and Chancellor of our university. And we are always deeply honored that she commits so much time to us. And during her time as Chancellor, she has been steadfast in support to the university, and I must say to me personally. So it's wonderful to have you here with us as normal for these graduation ceremonies. Second, of course, the warmest of congratulations to you, the graduands and your family and friends gathered with us today to celebrate your achievements in the Faculty of Education. I'm so glad that you've come all this way to be back in Buckingham with us on this gorgeous late summer's day. I look forward to meeting every one of you in the marquee on the Balloff lawn afterwards and hearing more of your stories then. As Dame Mary said, this year we are celebrating the 40th anniversary of our Royal Charter, granted to us in 1983, that made us a university proper, enabled us to award degrees. But it's worth in this anniversary year just looking back briefly on other parts of our history. Why, indeed, was the University of Buckingham founded at all? And it was back in the early 1970s that distinguished academics, and they were distinguished, Sir Sidney Kane, the director of the London School of Economics, Professor Max Balloff, professor at the University of Oxford, and so on and so forth. Distinguished academics were worried about the increasing government control of universities. And they wanted to set up a new university that would be independent of government funding, and independent of government regulation. And so the University of Buckingham was born. And a board of patrons was established 50 years ago, 1973, with eminent people such as the then Archbishop of Canterbury, the chief rabbi, and one Margaret Thatcher. And Margaret Thatcher indeed was involved from the very beginning of this university. She gave our first matriculation speech from this very spot in the Buckingham Parish Church, the Church of St. Peter and St. Paul, soon after becoming Her Majesty's loyal opposition leader. She went on, of course, to become the UK's first female Prime Minister and the longest-serving Prime Minister of the 20th century. And I know, Dame Mary, you often comment how privileged it feels to be wearing the very gown that Lady Thatcher, or Margaret Thatcher as she was then, wore when she was here giving that speech. And in her speech, she said some remarkable things, I think, but one I'll just give you now. She said, freedom, independence, we must remember, is not a gift. It is not something that governments confer, but something that a free people enjoys and uses. Now, Buckingham was controversial right from the beginning. You can imagine, I've just told you a brief reason for it being formed. The Department of Education and Science, as it was then, boycotted the opening ceremony. They didn't want to be part of it, and we hear that they said something along the lines of they ignored they ignored the founding of the University of Buckingham in the hope that it would fade away. And we most certainly have not faded away. And the strength of the Faculty of Education is one of the clear signs of that. And we have grown from strength to strength. We are widely recognized today. In many ways, the University of Buckingham punches above its weight. And I'd hate to be name-dropping here, but on Wednesday, we were invited by the Right Honourable Oliver Dowden, Deputy Prime Minister, to Number 10. He hosted a reception for the university there. It was one of the hottest days of the year, but 150 of us gathered in the gardens of Number 10 to celebrate our 40th anniversary. And of course, that really made it feel that we were being recognized in places that one perhaps wouldn't have expected. In particular, they were recognizing us for our excellence in freedom of speech and academic freedom, of course, based on academic excellence too. But in the age of cancellation culture and trigger warnings, our university is proud to be a safe space for debate. We celebrate free speech as the cornerstone of a genuinely inclusive environment. Now, this ceremony today is to confer degrees and other certificates in education, and that's particularly exciting to me as my life's work has been in education. My life's work indeed has been addressing educational injustices around the world, specifically looking at educational problems and solutions in the poorest slums in the world. But I didn't really get started until I was aged 40, and I just want to give you a little couple of paragraphs about this, because it may have some general lessons for you as you're getting started, progressing in your careers. I'd been a secondary school mathematics teacher in Zimbabwe for a few years, and then I worked as a mathematics researcher at NFER, the National Foundation for Educational Research, and my PhD was from the UCL Institute of Education in London. But in my late 30s, having become a youngish professor of education policy at Newcastle University, there was a severe disconnect in my life. I'd become, almost without knowing it, an expert on private education in developing countries, but everyone then knew that private education was for the privileged. But I wanted my life to be about serving the poor. So someone who wanted to serve the poor is an expert on private education, which everyone knows is about the elite and the privileged. How to square that circle. And I did manage to square that circle. I had an epiphany, if you like, in January 2000, where I was working in the old city of Hyderabad in south-central India. Went into the slums to see what would be happening there. And eureka, I heard children chanting in unison and following their voices down the alleyways located a small school in a residential building. It was a low-cost private school. Then I found another, and soon I was connected to a federation of 500 of these low-cost schools serving poor and low-income communities across Hyderabad. And that was the way I squared the circle in my life, wanting to serve the poor, finding there's this phenomenon of low-cost private schools serving the poor. I conducted numerous studies around the world and have worked in this area for 25 years in some of the world's worst, most difficult places, war-torn countries such as Sierra Leone, Liberia, South Sudan, and Somalia, and working also in Central America and the murder capital of the world, Tegucigalpa, in Honduras. It's been an immensely rewarding career, but I want to just give you 4 or 5 general lessons that may be relevant to you as you go forth into the world with your degrees. First, the obvious one, sometimes finding what you want to do with your life can come quite late. I was exactly 40 years old before I discovered low-cost private schools. I could have got into other interesting areas before, but I had this deep sense that there was something more interesting waiting for me. Go out and find what it is you should be doing and do it. Sometimes you just know there is something out there waiting for you. Find it. Don't settle for less. Second, do be aware of time. When you are young, and you're all young compared to me, you are all very young, it seems as though life is stretching out ahead almost forever. But when you look back on life, as I'm doing now, it often seems so short. Pink Floyd, in their track Time on the Dark Side of the Moon album, which goes back to my youth, my teenage years, I think they put it really well. Ticking away the moments that make up a dull day, you fritter and waste the hours in an offhand way. And you are young, and life is long, and there is time to kill today. And then one day you find 10 years have got behind you. No one told you when to run. You missed the starting gun. But it's not about missing the starting gun only, is it? More importantly, you have to realize that it's up to you to fire the starting gun. What are you waiting for? Don't wait too long. Thirdly, do live as not with being happy as one of your goals, but certainly one of your achievements. And being happy with family and friends is often the way to do that. It's always so precious. John Lennon, the Beatle who was tragically murdered when he was 40, told the story, "When I was 5 years old, my mother always told me that happiness was the key to life. When I went to school, they asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. I wrote down happy. They told me I didn't understand the assignment. I told them they didn't understand life." And finally, do try to change the world. That desire hasn't left me. It doesn't necessarily leave you as you grow older. It's not just something for younger people to have. We want to change the world for the better, to leave it a better place than when we found it in terms of our own ideas, beliefs, and values. And on this, Mahatma Gandhi famously told us to first be the change that you wish to see in the world. I interpret this as meaning that we must reflect on who we are and what we can need to change about ourselves before we attempt to change the world, but that by doing so, we can change the world. Jordan Peterson, the Canadian psychologist and social commentator, said pretty much the same thing when he told young people, young men especially, to clean their rooms before they seek to change the world. If you can't even clean up your own room, who on earth are you to give advice to the world? At the end of this service, you will be alumni of the University of Buckingham. There is a saying that give the ones you love wings to fly, roots to come back, and reasons to stay. And this reminds me of our University of Buckingham motto, in Latin, alis proprius volans, in English, flying on your own wings. I'd like to think that through your degrees today, we've helped you get wings, your life experiences, all these, they will help you to fly. But we want to be a strong part of your roots too. We want to give you reasons to come back here, both physically and metaphorically. As Dame Mary said, do see yourself as part of a growing international family of alumni of the University of Buckingham. I wish you well for the next stages of your lives. I shall be following your progress with great interest because, as educators together, I think we share so much. Thank you very much.
Chancellor, Mrs. Cynthia Tooley, MBE, University Orator, will now present Reverend William Pearson G. for the degree of Doctor of the University, honoris causa.
Chancellor, Vice-Chancellor, ladies and gentlemen, some of you may recognize Will as the vicar who went viral in 2021 when he refused to ban carols in the church. Will was one of the very few people at the time trying to highlight the devastating effect that the prolonged lockdown was having on people. Will leads by service, as I found out. Let me share his story. William Pearson G. was born in 1961 in Kensington. He was the youngest of 4 children to an English army officer and an Italian mother. His parents met whilst his father was posted to Italy, and regardless of which side of the war they were on, his father met a beautiful Italian woman, promptly married her, and brought her back to London with him. Sadly, Will's father died when Will was only 4, and finding herself a single parent, his mother, to make ends meet, started taking in lodgers, or as Will called them, paying guests. Now her young son watched and learned how to be adaptable. Age 7, Will was sent to boarding school, where he struggled with homesickness and learned how to be self-reliant. Now he finished primary school and went to one of the best secondary schools in the country, Westminster School, with not 1 but 2 awards. First for music, and secondly an all-rounder award for drama and DT. For Will, secondary school was a very happy place. He discovered some passions there, including photography. He spent a lot of time in the photography darkroom, which may have had something to do with the fact that it was a great place to have a secret cigarette. But a byproduct of this was that he did actually learn photography, which he still enjoys till now, minus the cigarettes. He also discovered rowing. In fact, he joined the school's rowing team and their ranking improved dramatically. Everything about school was great, apart from the small problem of academics. So with this in mind, it's a mystery that, a boy that loved and was fantastic at drama, DT, photography, basically physical arts and crafts, chose instead to do maths, chemistry, physics for his A-levels. So it was not really a surprise to Will when his grades were not good enough to gain him admission to university. So age 19, without the right grades to get into university and with no father figure in the picture to advise him, Will did not know what to do. So when his friend said, "Hey, I've joined the army," Will thought, hey, why not? I'll join too. And so at 19, he found himself in Sandhurst Army officer training. Coincidentally, Sandhurst's motto is serve to lead. Now, in the army, Will discovered the following: fair discipline, fantastic male role models, as well as enough diversity in training and learning to suit his personal learning style. It's fair to say that Will absolutely thrived in the army, so much so that within a year after deployment, he was given a certificate of commendation. Now, I rang Sandhurst, and actually very few soldiers receive one all through their careers, and Will got that within 1 year. Will fought for the country throughout the world, including in places like Germany, in the Balkans, in Brunei, Hong Kong, Greece, you name it. He then applied to join the Special Forces. Now, those of you who watch the TV program will know that this is one of the toughest training selection processes in the world. And Will got all the way through to the very last stage, where unfortunately an injury meant he couldn't go further. Will left the army at this point, briefly. During this interlude, he dabbled in the film industry, not in front of the camera, even though he clearly has the looks for that, but in production. And that's where he met and married Anna. Will realized that the army was for him, and he reapplied to join. And the army, of course, given his track record, welcomed him back with wide open arms. Now, Will returned different. He returned with commitment and focus. And this was reflected in his rise, because he then went on to work for the Ministry of Defense, for the Army Officer Selection Board, which is pretty difficult to get into. On a personal front, his family was also growing as he welcomed 2 small children with Anna. Life was fantastic. One day, whilst at the Army Staff College, he got a call that changed his life. Anna and their 2 children had been in a car crash. Anna and their 23-month-old son, James, died instantly. Miraculously, their 3-year-old daughter survived with barely a scratch. Will suddenly found himself a single parent to a little girl. So he took 2 weeks off work, did what he had to do, returned, finished his training, and got a job at the army headquarters. And then he was suddenly called to go to Iraq. And realizing that this would mean he had to leave his little girl, who had already faced so much loss, back here, Will made a very tough decision for someone who loved the army. Will decided to leave the army so he could spend time with his daughter. Now, he considered his options, and at this point, Providence played a part. You see, Will's brother had a printing business which was called G Brothers, which was either providentially named or prophetically named, because at this point there was only one G brother working there. So Will joined the business, thereby making the name more accurate, but also helped make the business more successful. God has a way of rerouting people through difficult times, and for Will, the changes came thick and fast. He joined a very lively church, he did the Alpha course, he met a beautiful lady, Lucia, they got married, and a daughter, Mimi, quickly followed. Now, Will began to realize that although he enjoyed working with his brother in the printing business, he wasn't making use of his God-given gifts. He felt there was something more. And then someone suggested that he gets ordained as a priest, as a vicar, and Will thought, absolutely not. But spurred on by something, he still applied and decided to go through the selection process, although he was expecting that at every stage he would fail the process. So no one was more surprised than Will to find himself successful. And at 42, he started his training at Wycliffe College in Oxford. He trained for 2 years whilst his family expanded with the addition of another daughter, Jemima, and a son, Theo. During his 4-year curacy at St. Andrew's Church in North Oxford, he learned to be very confident in his sermons, Because often he'll be preaching, and there within the congregation would be the very experts who wrote the material he had studied to write his sermon. After this, he went to see the bishop regarding a vacancy to be the rector at Buckingham. The bishop said gravely, as I imagine they do, "Don't bother applying. You don't have the right experience." Will's response was an outward, "Thank you very much," and an inward, "Well, I'll show you." Because Will knew that even though he did not have the standard trajectory to become the rector of a parish, especially one like Buckingham, he knew that he had been through the pressure cooker test of life. He knew that he had the emotional and the psychological experience to be able to empathize with his parishioners, whatever point they found themselves in life. He wasn't wrong. He was appointed the rector of Buckingham in 2010. And since then, this church, which is one of 815 in the Oxford Diocese, has quadrupled in attendance and size. In fact, given that Buckingham is one of the smaller towns in the diocese, this church, in a diocese that includes obviously Oxford and much bigger towns, has one of the highest Sunday attendance numbers of all of them. And under Will's leadership, the church expanded its community engagement. It does all sorts. Every single day of the week, I tell you, it does something different. Be it for young moms with their children looking for messy play and someone to talk to and just 5 minutes of peace, or for the community, lonely, isolated people, where this place is transformed into a restaurant with 3-course meals served for anybody, no questions asked, just so you don't feel so lonely. Or is it hot dog Wednesdays for families struggling to feed, or men's curries, or bridge lessons, you name it, it goes on and on. Now, as one of the church wardens said, Will has been a tsunami of change, not just for this church, but for the town. Now, if you ask Will, he'll say it's down to his team. So I asked his team, and they all said it's down to Will's leadership. I hope you will join me in celebrating the man, the father, the soldier, the reverend, and shortly, the Dr. William Pearson G.
By the authority of the University, it gives me great pleasure to confer upon you the degree of Doctor of the University, Honoris Causa.
Reverend Pearson G. will now reply to convocation.
I normally have an iPad in front of me. I need to unfold some papers. Chancellor, Vice-Chancellor, graduands and distinguished guests. It is fair to say that unlike all of you wonderful graduands who have worked so hard for your degrees, I stand here with a serious case of imposter syndrome. Given my generally poor performance at school, something like this was only ever going to happen either due to someone having an ironic sense of humour or through some sort of divine intervention. Understandably, I firmly believe it is the latter. As you will know, as the rector of the church, I'm well accustomed to standing here every Sunday and speaking. Never, ever have I thought I would deviate from my normal text, the Bible, and to respond to such a warm oration from Mrs. Tooley. Now, I don't know how many words are normally in a doctoral thesis, but in the past 14 or so years, I reckon I've written and spoken over 1.2 million words from this lectern. As my words are always about the greatest story ever told, really there should be a multi-volume bestseller in there worthy of the Chancellor's husband. But I suspect not. Although I should point out that Lord Archer still has some way to go before he topples the Bible off the #1 spot as the best-selling book of all time. Now, I know just enough of academia to know that doctoral research is, generally speaking, very narrow but very deep. For example, the predictability of failure in structures built with reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete in British educational establishments 1980 to 2023 would surely be funded, whereas a research topic like how the world has gone woke would be too broad a subject, and in any case, it would soon get cancelled. My specialist subject is, and always be Jesus Christ. His roots in the Jewish people, his birth, his ministry of teaching, his execution, his death, his resurrection, and his promised return. And my main role here is to make disciples of Jesus, and so, truth be told, many would wish to see me cancelled. In fact, some in my own denomination want to see me cancelled. Yet, despite all the odds, this church has grown and grown, so that, as that great hymn says, soul by soul and silently, her shining bounds increase. And with this growth has come meaningful engagement in the community. And I can honestly say we have made a difference. And that is precisely what you should all be aiming to do out there when you go into the world. While some churches are managing decline, we've had to buy more chairs and create more space. I take little credit for this, as it has been down to the power of God, and as Cynthia prophetically said, and a great team, but it is true. And if you don't believe in the power of God to work miracles, my standing in front of you and receiving this honour amongst the other honorary graduates who have illustrious and world-famous careers should surely persuade you, because I am simply a sinner saved by grace. But where I think the church shares an important common value that your Vice-Chancellor exemplifies is that of freedom. Now, I always support the underdog who battles convention or received wisdom, and I have so much respect for this university that offers a 2-year degree that enables students to start their careers a year before their peers. I respect and admire your Vice-Chancellor's championing of free speech, of standing firm against cancel culture, of leading a university that wants its students to engage in serious debate, including over issues with which they might profoundly disagree or, heaven forbid, be offended by. The Church, too, champions freedom, the freedom that comes from following Christ, who promises to set us free from fear, guilt, and meaninglessness. So I want to thank this wonderful university, not just for my honorary doctorate, but for being such a beacon of enlightenment and for enriching this beautiful and historic market town. We are rooting for you from the sidelines. May you grow and prosper. May your influence grow across not just the UK university scene, but abroad with your multinational and multi-ethnic alumni of all faiths and of none. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for this immense honour, and may God bless you all to live lives unashamed of yesterday and unafraid of tomorrow. Thank you.
Chancellor, I call upon Professor Barnaby Lennon, Dean of the Faculty of Education, to present candidates for awards of the University of Buckingham in education.
Chancellor, I present to you the graduates in education. For the degree of Master of Arts in Education, Inclusive Educational Leadership, Hayley Christie. Alexandra Dean with distinction. For the degree of Master of Arts in Education, Teaching and Learning, Katie Towers-Clark. For the degree of Master of Arts in Residential Education, Stephen Greaves. For the degree of Master of Education in Educational Leadership and Management, James Clements. Mark Collier. James Dunn with distinction. James Fish with distinction. Sarah Huff with distinction. Laurie Power. Indrajit Kumar Theetal with distinction. For the award of the National Award for Special Educational Needs Coordination, Lorraine Angel with distinction. Sarah Nagiri with distinction. For the award of the Postgraduate Certificate in Education, Harrison Booth with distinction. Alice Brett. Patrick Reynard. Alexandra Swan. Geraldine Whitfield with distinction. For the award of the International Postgraduate Certificate in Education, Asma Fuda. For the award of the Postgraduate Certificate in Education through School-Centred Initial Teacher Training is Alina Ahmed. Jennifer Chancellor with distinction. Hannah Davison with distinction. Emma Dunham with distinction. James Elliott with distinction. Jessica Fuller with distinction. Jan Gyazi. Katie Ann Graby. Samuel Lindley. Stephanie Mandret. Natalie Matthew with distinction. George Miles with distinction. Sabrina Owie. Lauren Philp. Sarah Provan. Lucy Redgrave with distinction. Blythe Riding with distinction. Chloe Sperrin with distinction. For the award of the Postgraduate Certificate in Education through School-Centred Initial Teacher Training, Victoria Lane. For the award of the Scottish Professional Graduate Certificate in Education, Emily Thane. For the award of the Postgraduate Certificate in Education with Qualified Teacher Status, Sahara Ali. Lucy Ball with distinction. Anika Broom. Rochelle Felstead. Anne Finch with distinction. Lauren Golightly with distinction. Megan Griffiths with distinction. Megan Hardy with distinction. Brittany Holmes with distinction. Joanna Jones with distinction. Thomas Judge with distinction. Megan Kane. Brenda Lapopo with distinction. George Littlemore with distinction. Marcus Malley. Holly McDonough with distinction. Scarlett Merrill with distinction. Christina Money with distinction. Regina Merthen-Bala with distinction. Frederick Nels. Nikki Pritchard with distinction. Emma Stevens with distinction. Ryan Symington with distinction. Chancellor, that concludes the presentation.
The Chancellor will now conclude this ceremony.
So, as the Registrar has just said, this ceremony is now drawing towards its close. May I again congratulate all our new graduates and wish you all good fortune in the next stage of your careers, and hope to hear something about those careers when we go down to the Beloff lawn afterwards and have a glass of something cool. And incidentally, the photographs that have been taken are instantly available, thanks to the wonders of the internet, on the ground or first floor of the Vinson building. As you, our latest distinguished graduates, leave the university, you will take with you wherever you go and throughout your life the knowledge you have acquired of educational theory and practice. Equipped now as you are with the skills and knowledge to rescue young minds, and not so young minds too, from the pain and tyranny of ignorance, flying on their own wings as you fly on your own wings, as our university motto has it. May I also say what a particular pleasure it was for me to carry coals to Newcastle, in a sense, by conferring an honorary doctorate of this university on the rector of this very church, Will Pearson-Gee, and to comment on how his own life story is a perfect example of triumph over difficulties, tragedy, to a thoroughly fulfilling and worthwhile career. So many congratulations to our latest doctor. This ceremony is now concluded. Thank you.
Please be upstanding.